Hello and welcome to UK Fitness Hub. My name is Travis Tarrant and today we're going to be covering absolutely everything that you need to know about anterior pelvic tilts, how to fix them and what causes them. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So, anterior pelvic tilts, what does this mean? What is an anterior pelvic tilt? So anterior means forward. Pelvic means your pelvis, which is in your hips, and tilt means to tilt forward in this case because we're tilting anteriorly. So what that would look like in a typical client is I want you to think of the hips as being something that should be nice and straight, okay? So the hips should be nice and solid and straight. Somebody that's got an anterior pelvic tilt is actually going to be tipped forward, so tipped anteriorly. Now this causes this to happen, okay? Now nobody's going to walk around with a straight back like this, okay? What they're going to do is they're going to hyperextend the back to come up to eye level and to be able to see properly. The problem with that is somebody that is naturally tilted and walking around and doing everyday activities with that excessive curvature in the spine, that excessive lumbar lordosis, they're going to have a lot of pain in their lower back, and that can cause compression. It can cause the muscles around the lower back to tighten up and seize up. It's also going to cause a load of other problems that we're going to get into when it comes into your corrective exercises. Some, but not all, the causes for anterior pelvic tilts are poor posture, obesity, lack of exercise, and spinal conditions. Now, let's go a little bit into those before we cover our corrective exercise. Poor posture is one of the most common causes of an anterior pelvic tilt. When the body's in a seated position for too long, muscles in the hips start to become short and they start to adapt to that short position because they're spending so much time in that position. Obesity results in the presence of excess fat in the body. Now this can be stored in the abdomen and buttocks. This puts extra strain on the lower back, which may cause the lumbar spine to bend. This in turn can be another reason why we can form that anterior pelvic tilt. In addition to increasing the risk of obesity, a lack of exercise can weaken the core muscles that sit around the trunk and pelvis. Weak muscles are less able to support the spinal column, allowing the spine to curve excessively. We can form an anterior pelvic tilt as part of an underlying spinal condition. So conditions such as kyphosis, spondylolisthesis, and diastasis can cause an anterior pelvic tilt. So it doesn't have to always be something that we've been doing or not been doing that causes an anterior pelvic tilt. So now we know what causes an anterior pelvic tilt. How do we fix it? So what I want you to do for the first stretch is put the soles of your feet together, hands out, and I want you to reach as far as you can and try and get as much of a stretch in the lower back as possible. Now, this is going to take out the hip flexors as much as possible. And when you're in this position, if you're at a place like work and you can't actually, or you don't want to get on the floor, you can do this seated. So try and touch the floor seated. If you can't, no problem, try and do that in the future. And if you can actually make it a little bit more abrasive by going further. In addition to stretching out the back, we also need to stretch out the hip flexor muscles. So in this stretch, I'm doing a kneeling hip flexor stretch. Now my right knee's at a 90-degree angle, my left knee's on the floor. I'm squeezing my glutes and core as much as physically possible. And there is a way, if you don't feel this one, to increase the stretch. So from this angle you're about to see, I put my hand up in the air and I'm side flexing. So trying to bend my trunk to my right hand side, and this will increase the stretch. Now our next stretch is a chair hip flexor stretch. Well, this is really, really abrasive. So if you can't do the first one we just saw, then certainly leave this for a little while. This is really quite excruciating and prizes those hip flexors open, stretches mainly the iliopsoas muscle. So it is a great stretch, but really be cautious with when you choose to do this one. Make sure that you progress through the previous one first. So the first of your corrective exercises is a dead bug. Now the dead bug involves lying face up on a mat with your arms in the air above your torso and your legs in the air with your knees bent at a 90-degree angle. Then you lower each opposite arm and opposite leg towards the floor in a slow and controlled fashion, trying to keep your lower back on the mat, and return to center and repeat on the other side. Now, the next corrective exercise can be really tricky. So this is called an RKC plank. Start in a plank position, up on your toes, body straight, resting on your elbows at 90 degrees. Push upwards with your upper back, pushing your shoulder blades away from the floor. And then breathing out, squeeze your quads and glutes as hard as you can whilst you hold this position. Keep them squeezed and hold that tense position for as long as possible. Try and feel like you're trying to tuck your bum in as you do this. Moving on to our next exercise, which is a pelvic tilt. Lie on your back with your knees bent and the soles of your feet on the floor. Allow yourself to come into a neutral position, and you might find with an anterior pelvic tilt that your back comes off the floor. This is absolutely fine. Try and exhale as much as physically possible and rock your hips towards your head. Now, I'm demonstrating here in the video the rotational pattern in which I want you to rotate. So I want you to try and rotate posteriorly. So try and rotate back and up. If you found all of those way too easy, then we can progress onto yoga ball planks. So I want you to try and get the yoga ball an arm's length away. And then what you do is you pop your hands in the same position really that you would as a plank and allow the ball to roll onto your forearm. Now, if you want to make this harder, you can actually pause when you come out. So maybe do a 2 or 3 second pause. And this is a really good way to actually develop some shoulder stability at the same time. But it should be said that you should only progress onto this one once you can do the others, and this is seen as a harder exercise. Let's talk about how to strengthen up those glute muscles. So the next one is a glute bridge. Lie on your back with your knees bent, hip distance apart, and your feet flat on the floor. As you drive up, try to squeeze the glutes as hard as you can. And remember to keep your core engaged throughout the exercise. At no point in this exercise should you be feeling any lower back pain or anything in the lower back. Really try and focus on driving with the glutes and core and lowering under control. The next exercise is a hip thrust. Now you can see in the demonstration I'm doing here that I've got my hands on my hips, and that's quite a natural position for me because I generally do this with a barbell. However, for a beginner, you might want to put your arms in a T position, and that will allow for greater stability when you're doing this exercise. Exactly the same as your previous glute bridge exercise, you want to be feeling this in the glutes and hamstrings. Brace your core as you do the movement and try to do it slow and steady and under control. A lot of the time when I see patients with anterior pelvic tilts, they've got tight hamstrings that accompany with this. Now, from a time savings perspective, it's nice to throw these single leg variations of hamstring curls in. See this as more of an optional exercise. It's not a must. However, if you're doing this as part of a routine in the gym, it's good to throw in. Now, it's quite easy to know how to progress when you are in a gym and you've got a gym membership. You can always use a weight or a barbell, but if you're at home, be creative. So use bags or books or anything that's going to add a little bit of weight to your exercise. We can also be really out the box and creative and do exercises like on the screen now, which is a yoga ball hamstring curl. And to do a yoga ball hamstring curl, we want to have our heels on the ball. We want to dig in until our torso is up off the floor, brace the core, and then bring the heels in. And you'll certainly feel this very quickly. Finally, I want to bring your attention to the diagram on screen, and it shows really the common problems that you would have if you had an anterior pelvic tilt, which is tightness in the erector spinae muscles, tightness in the hip flexors, and weak and inhibited glutes and abdominal muscles. Now, everything we've done in our corrective exercises is to fix all of those 4 areas. However, if the takeaway can be anything from this video, I want you to think, if you are somebody that goes to the gym, and you're trying to build a functional physique, whether you're a runner, a weightlifter, or whatever, you have to start off with a really solid foundation, and that can only come with strong glute and strong core muscles. So try and base everything from there moving forward. So that concludes today's video on anterior pelvic tilts and what lumbar lordosis is. Now, if you're somebody that would like workout programs on this, so you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or you would like a workout plan that not only caters for a beginner, but also tells you what to advance onto and when to stop and all the frequently asked questions I get about this, download my PDF file that's on my website. It talks about this topic in way more detail than we've done today, but I've highlighted some of the things that can kickstart you in rehabilitating yourself and trying to get those hips back in line. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I've been Travis, and I'll see you soon.